a lot easier.
Yeah, when you have 4 or whatever you're saying.
You'll definitely want to put these on because it will make you sound a lot better. I notice when people try not to wear them, they just can't engage as much, or they're too quiet, or they're too loud.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so you can kind of get a feel for what the recording's going to sound
That
like and everything.
is better.
So, to talk about podcasts before we get started, because you had an interest in potentially doing this stuff yourself, I'll tell you my brief story of how I got on the whole podcast train, and then, you can kind of make a decision on what works for you. So, I was originally renting a studio smaller than this, paying a technician to do all of the things that needed to be done. They did a great job. The problem that I feel like I had with it was, number one, you had to rent the studio time. You definitely, I had, people at the last minute would cancel.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just wouldn't even show up. People would try to, reschedule or like say, hey, I'm running an hour late. That makes things super inconvenient because any studio that is doing something like this, it is very unprofitable for the actual studio time itself. So unless you are legitimately like staying super regimented,
right,
it's really hard. So that was the first issue I had with it. And then the second issue I had with it was like, the editing is the most expensive part. So I don't do like the polishing, if you will.
Yeah.
I do like the initial edits and everything because we've got multiple cameras. We can even do as many as 3. And I've gotten us to the point where I'm doing all the technician stuff, where I'm the one doing the recordings and all of that. But I get all of the cameras together in terms of the editing, which a lot of that's actually done through AI, which will be one of my questions for you.
Yes. All the questions.
Right. So it's actually done through AI. So it's kind of easy, but it's time consuming in respect to not my time, but like a lot of this stuff requires that it's sitting there doing its thing for like exporting an hour-long podcast takes like 2 hours.
Let's see that part of it. I'm like,
so it's like, no, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
The computer is, but it's like, okay, you set it, forget it, and you're kind of constantly trying to, it's like cooking, it's like,
yes.
I can't leave because the roast is going to be done in 2 hours, and I don't know if I have enough time to get to Walmart and pick up the kids or whatever.
It's a good comparison.
Right. So that right there is kind of the whole podcast thing in a nutshell in regards to what I do and what I went through. And so now that I'm kind of where I'm at right now, you are definitely close to like number 30. Wow. So we've got like 30 plus hours in, because there have been a few that we've done that I've just done as fun with like friends or other people that are in the business that I'm like, hey, let's just kind of mess around, see what happens. Like I've actually forgot to hit record sometimes. Sometimes I'm not recording with the audio.
Did you hit record?
Yeah, we're good. Sometimes I'm recording with the cameras, but not with the audio. And so the number one thing that I've recognized through doing this is, well, number one, so we basically spared no expense in terms of lighting, in terms of microphones. We have 4K cameras. We have 3 of them. There's really not much more that I could have done to spend money except for on the room, where for those of you that don't see this, if you look way up, the ceiling isn't soundproofed, and, we have stuff in the back that isn't like pretty, but this is like a dead room.
Yeah.
So,
which I've heard dead room is really, really important.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of recordings that, so let's take it from the top, and I'm only explaining this to you because you're interested, and truthfully, I'll probably cut some of this.
Totally fine.
But it's nice to kind of get flowing.
Yeah.
So the number one thing that I noticed when I started doing the editing and everything along those lines is I am so much more like aware of the audio quality and the video quality in terms of what other people are doing, because before this, I would see videos and I couldn't really tell you why I thought one looked better than the other. I mean, maybe I could say, oh, the video quality is better in this one, but you don't notice the audio quality as much in like a crappy video if you're not editing and paying attention.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, you still in the back of your mind are like, I like this video better and I just don't know why. Right? Like as a normal person that doesn't do stuff like this.
I've definitely heard, even when someone is interviewing someone or the host has great sound quality and then the person that they're interviewing does not have a mic or equipment, like you can tell they're on their cell phone or whatever that.
Yeah, so I run into scenarios mainly with women, which I will commend you for not complaining about, but they're like, can I do this podcast without wearing the headset? And I mean, the short answer is yes. It's just I find that the quality isn't as good, and I've thought about You can plug in earbuds so you're not wearing like
I've seen that.
headphones,
Yeah.
but then it's like I can't provide earbuds to everybody. Nobody wants to stick earbuds that have been in someone else's ears. You know, that's why the like overhead headset is a lot more, and like we have the wipes or whatever, and we wipe them down and
Yeah.
everything. And frankly, everyone who's in here is like super professional and has it together.
Yeah, but I love being able to hear, you know what I mean? Like me
Yeah.
speaking as well. That really helps me to understand, like, again, the sound quality is everything.
Yeah, it
So
dials
I'm
you in.
also paying attention to that a lot in podcasts now, because initially when I was like, oh, I want to start a podcast, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of audio that goes into that,
Yeah.
or editing or technology or equipment that I don't want to spend 2 years being like, I wish I would have done this or would have done that. Like, I'm really trying to get some information, collect that from people that I know that are doing it, and really just try to launch from that instead of, just Googling,
Yeah. Well, and I'd be happy, I've been happy to
Yeah.
help a lot of people just because I did a lot of the Googling, and then I have two actually past clients that do this. Like, they set up for like other businesses and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So everything that I ordered here, I actually just, someone gave me, it was awesome.
That's
Just put
awesome.
together a laundry list of everything that I needed, and I literally just like loaded up my Amazon cart, and well into almost,
awesome.
well into almost 5 figures later, here we are. It is
Well, I
not
have people
cheap.
that are like, oh, you should do that. Like, because mine will be business
Mhm.
related, but also personal,
Yeah.
just, fun stuff.
Well, you're welcome to come on here at any
Thank
time, and
you.
even if you ever want to use this room, I mean, I'm
Thank
telling
you.
people like within reason, as long as you're not like living here, I have no problem like setting you up, and then really the money and not the money, but the main expense outside of the physical things that we have in
Yeah.
here is really the editing. And like if you have an editing company, then by all means, like we
Right.
can. If not, I have a great editing company that I've been working with that actually two of my guests have already connected with. So
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he
yeah.
was connected to me through a real estate agent, actually, and I didn't anticipate getting the value from that phone call that I did.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like you're everything that has prevented me from doing one.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is space,
Yeah.
quality, things like that.
Well,
So,
space is the big thing, and that's frankly, what I've recognized about renting is like these guys legitimately have to have people like in and out because it's not like when people are like, can we pay you, can we do this, it's like it's just not like, I don't know how to say it, like there's no money in renting this space. Like if I charged you to rent this space, you're gonna find out really quickly like we either need to do this ourselves, or you might find out that you just don't need to put together as much content as you thought.
right.
Right.
And you don't know that until you start, is what I'm like trying
Right.
to just remind myself that it takes just starting,
Yeah. I went all in. Like I said,
What do you
I
say?
did my research.
Prepare
And
to basically trash your first few that you do,
Oh, yeah.
because, it's just you getting started.
Yeah, no, and the one thing that I will say is looking back on it, like there was a few things that we purchased up front that I was like, do I really need all of this? Like, is this like, am I spending too much money? And there isn't one thing. Well, I probably could have gotten away with only 2 cameras instead of 3, but I'm sure one
Right.
of them will break, and I'll be happy. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
yeah. Or like when you were saying 4 people in here, I'm sure that changes a little bit too, just
Yeah.
getting the right angles and all
mm-hmm.
the things.
Lights was something that I was very hesitant to spend money on, and
Yeah.
was like shocked at how important the lighting really is, because doing the recordings, we've like turned off some of the lights and tweaked some things, and it's like I don't know what we would do without the lights.
Without the lights,
Yeah,
that's
it's
good
a big
to know,
deal.
because you don't really think about those things if that's not your background or what you have.
And they're very expensive.
Yeah.
And I kind of fought with the guy who put together my like laundry list, and I was like,
Mhm.
do I really need to spend this much money on the lights? And he was like, dude, this is like out of, there's probably 25 things. He's like, this is in the top 3
Oh wow. Well,
that
yeah,
you need
with
to
video,
purchase. And I'm like, okay.
lighting is everything.
Right.
Yeah, but it looks great because I've been
Thank
watching
you.
it on Facebook, and so it
Well, then
looks
it's
awesome.
working.
It's
I mean,
working.
So what I tell everybody, and we'll kind of get started here.
Yeah.
What I tell everybody is that the whole purpose of this podcast was designed to do 2 things. It was designed, number one, to, there's no secret in our business. Things have kind of slowed down, and it
Yep.
was really designed to get real estate agents and people that are in the financial arena, because, even insurance agents have told me, hey, we're a little slow. Financial
Yeah.
advisors have said, hey, people are a little bit more conservative. And my philosophy, we just put this out today, I think I said mantra is, the majority of the people that I surround myself with in this business, whether it's insurance, financial advisors, they're great at what they do. They're great people. They're
Right.
smart. They're knowledgeable. But I've come to recognize that, and I'll relate this mainly to real estate agents. I'm seeing a lot of real estate agents that I know are really, really good that are struggling right now because their ability to go after new business is just not where it needs to be.
Right.
And a lot of that comes down to whether it is, whether it's networking, whether it's marketing themselves through social media. Believe it or not, a lot of real estate agents are really bad at follow-up.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like,
amazing how many are bad at follow-up.
right.
I'm like, you're not contacting any of your past clients? No.
Right. So this is an opportunity for the majority of the people that have trouble generating new business. And then furthermore, there's a lot of people that are really nervous about getting on camera and doing stuff like this. And what
Sure.
I've identified, and we actually had like a thing on this where we had a few people that wanted to come in and they wanted to use our space and they wanted to bring in like a teleprompter and do all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And I said, that's fine. Come on in, use the space, do whatever you need to do. But when you finish up, let's do a podcast and just really have a conversation about the market now and what you guys are doing to generate new business and so on and so forth. And long story short, we found that scripted videos feel very scripted.
Yes.
And doing things in a setting like this, number one, comes across a lot more genuine. Number two, that genuineness, it resonates, right? And so
Right.
we talked about topics and we're able to cut clips. Like the full clips are on YouTube, but really what we're doing is we're cutting like 1 minute, 2 minute shorts that are going on
Right.
Instagram and stuff like that. And then the people that want to watch the full podcast, they can absolutely see it on YouTube. But yeah, the shorts, we were like, wow, the content that's coming out of this, and people are basically producing better content because it's not scripted, and then they catch themselves like feeling more comfortable just having a conversation like this because it's just way more organic, right? Like,
Yeah, it's not that, well, my productivity coach told me to post, one video a day. And so they're
right,
hopping on and and you can just see it,
yeah,
I'm like, this is just you being pressured to get on camera, which is good. It's a start. But I think just that genuine conversation about how you been, what do you do,
right,
is really what people want to hear.
yeah. Well, I'm
in my
excited to
opinion.
have you on. Like I said, you're probably close to our 30th podcast now.
That's awesome.
And yeah, well, thank you. It's
Yeah.
actually been going way better than I thought. And it's been like a 50-50 split between real estate agents. And then the other 50 is like I've had builders and
Yeah.
insurance agents and all that. But I'm super excited to have you on
Thank you.
because you touch on something that is, very enticing or should at least be enticing to a lot of real estate agents, which is
Right.
what I'm trying to make my main audience. So, with that being said,
So
Amy
here
Goldberg,
I
tell me a little bit about
am.
what you do. And, I've got a lot of questions for you.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So I am the owner of Seamless Contracts, which is a transaction management company for real estate agents. So real estate agents are my customer.
Mm-hmm.
We
Just to slow you down, remember, I know what you do and you know what you do, but everybody else out there might not. So what is a transaction coordinator?
So, a transaction coordinator essentially helps real estate agents through the contract, a few different areas of the process. So, pre listing, which would be the major components of getting their listing ready to go on MLS,
Mm-hmm.
and then also helping them from the moment that their property goes under contract until it closes.
Okay.
So, what that means is we'll help with everything outside the physical negotiating is what I really like to tell agents because it really is a true extension of the agent to, help manage the deadlines within the contract, which is a huge thing. Compliance, it's probably the leading reason why an agent would hire us is
Okay.
they hate paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll call and they'll say, I really need help with the compliance piece, which is obviously included in our package, but we do so much outside of that. So, managing deadlines, doing the compliance process, full communication with professional parties as well as the buyer or seller or whatever side they're on. helping to schedule closings. I mean, it truly is an extension of the real estate agent. So it's like them hiring an assistant,
Yeah.
but it's third party, so they're paying per transaction.
Right.
So it's really, I think, attracting to agents because they're only paying when they're doing business, which I think is really attractive
For sure.
to an agent. So yeah, I started Seamless in 2017.
Okay.
I've been in the industry since 2014. Started on a big expansion real estate team in Keller Williams. Most people know who Tim Heil is. Shout out to Tim. But he is where I started my journey in real estate. So dove in there, learned everything. It was like drinking from a fire hose.
Right.
Everything was kind of in shambles at that time. We were what we called a ninja team at that time. So it was very fast paced, all about the volume. So all I've ever known is volume, real estate. So when we started expanding out of Texas, I really started losing my touch a little bit. I'm from Texas, small town in Texas. Liberty Hill is where I'm from, and
Well, Liberty Hill's blowing up.
it is. Oh my gosh, it's so people.
I'm sure you think it's sad.
We were just talking about that from someone from my hometown that still lives there, and everyone's like, "You need to get out of there." Well, I left as soon as I graduated high school, but I've always been in the Austin area, so yes, it has exploded.
Yeah.
But when I see homes for sale there for like 1.3, 1.4, I mean, that just was non-existent when I grew up there.
Right.
So very small high school, very small town. So yeah, when we started expanding outside of Texas, I really lost my touch. We were doing deals in Denver and Atlanta, and so I thought, man, with all the relationships and connections that I had made in the market center, because that's where I officed every day. So people knew, oh, Amy works for Tim. She's awesome. We actually did like a spin-off contract to close team when I was still there. But anyways, I have a full background in management, and so I would be lying if I said I wasn't really burnt out when I decided to kind of branch out on my own. I really just wanted to sit in my room and do deals by myself with no interruptions. I just wanted to, I have a work ethic that's insanity, but so I thought I just want to be by myself in my room. So in 2017, I told my husband, I said, I'm going to do this. And he said, well, with your work ethic, there's no way you'll fail. So I thought, okay. So I started with zero, got an LLC, started cold calling in my room, agents, and telling them who I was, what I did, and that I'm per transaction. So give me a shot. And, if you don't want to use me again after that, that's okay.
Right.
So I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything. It was all word of mouth is how I started. I want to say I was probably 1.5 to 2 years in before I ever created a website.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of crazy. People would call me and say, Amy, I've been trying to convince my friend or whoever's in my colleague or whatever that it's not about the website. It's about, coming in, and putting in the work and growing it and kind of figuring it out on the way, along the way. And I'm just that person. So, anyways, so I started calling people, telling them who I was and what I did. And my goal initially was to close 30 transactions a month. That's what I wanted to get to. It was my goal, my initial goal. And within 6 months, I was there.
Nice.
And I still had people calling me needing service. Oh, I heard about you from so-and-so, or you were on the other side of the transaction. Do you have availability for new clients? And I said, okay, there's still need. I am foundationed on creating opportunity for other people too. So I had a wealth of knowledge and background in management as well when I started Seamless. So I thought, okay, I'll get a person to help with the spillover. And so I did that. And before I knew it, she was full. And I was like, oh, and they were still calling.
Right.
They were still inquiring, And so at that point, we developed a website and people were inquiring through the website. And so now, fast forward, I now have 14 transaction coordinators.
It's amazing.
Yes. And
Well, I know we work with you all the time.
really,
Yeah.
so you see my girls. So
Oh, yeah.
I get that a lot, like out
Oh,
in
yeah.
public. People are like, "Oh, I know." They don't know me, but
Right.
they know Seamless.
Yeah. I
So
forget who
it's
the
a
main girl I
cool.
work with. She's another blonde girl, young girl. I could picture her right now because her picture's on her signature.
Well, and you help
I
some
do a
of
lot
the
for Spinelli, and
yes,
then
yeah,
there's people from Compass that utilize you that I
yes,
know. I mean, yeah, there's a lot.
yes.
We work with Seamless all the time.
I love it. I love it. And it's kind of crazy because there was a time where I was out at a restaurant and my kids were running around. I was with my husband and we came across a couple and we were, he was saying, my wife's a real estate agent. I was like, does she have a transaction coordinator? And he's like, yeah, she's already working with someone. She really likes them. And so we kind of got into a conversation and I said, well, who is it? And she was like, oh, it's Seamless Contracts. And I was like, I own Seamless.
Yeah, that's cool though.
So I'll never forget that. That was the moment where I knew that I had grown big enough where I didn't know everybody.
Hmm.
And that's always been something I've had a difficult time with
Yeah.
because all of it has been repeat and referral business.
Yeah.
So it's been either we're on the other side of a transaction or a title company knows us or a lender knows us.
Hmm.
So it's all been word of mouth. And so I think for me, knowing that that's how I started my business and want to continue growing my business, it just kind of like naturally happened where I was like, oh, I'm big enough to where I don't know everybody. And so
Right.
that's always something that's hard for me because at the core, I'm just little Amy.
Yeah. Well, so just to be clear, the beginning started obviously contacting agents you had connections with. They
Yes.
used you on a per transaction basis. And then from there, kind of word of mouth grew. You kind of built a team. Is there anything that you do outside of that, either past, present, or maybe even want to do in the future that's going to, help you get new business, get in front of new faces that may, consider using you in the future?
Yeah. So I've thought about that countless times because like you were saying, through social media and
Hmm.
expanding your network and ways to get new business. Some of it comes more natural to me than others. And so for me, what I'm focusing on is expanding my network because since I started Seamless, everything has been uphill.
Yeah.
Right. We were in the healthiest market that we've ever been in. I mean, it's always been an uphill for me.
Hmm.
And to see that plateau and even, drop a little bit, it's put my mind into places where I just haven't had to be before.
Hmm.
So for me, expanding my network, getting out in front of people, conversations, because you never know who you're going to meet or
Sure.
who they are going to know. So for me, I've dipped a little bit into like Google ads and things like that. And for my business personally, relationships are everything.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to put my focus more there, like, starting a podcast, things like that, that people will know more about who I am
Sure.
and not just what I do. But I think sometimes when you decide to be in business with someone, it's for more than just that they're
Good at what they
specialized
do.
in transaction management.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I touched on in the very beginning.
Yep.
I mean, you obviously want to be really good at what you do, but people also need to be they want to know you. And then they
Sure.
need to know that they can trust you. I mean, you and I, out of everybody who I have in this podcast, obviously we're looking for the same person typically.
Yep.
So I know exactly what you're going through.
Yes.
So
Our customer happens to be the
right,
same,
right.
The same
Well,
person.
and we've done events before. I mean,
Yeah.
we've tried to get in front of people, and you are welcome to come to this event. I anticipate a lot of the people you want to be in front of to be there also.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And I mean that things like that I think are where it starts. And I think we all as business owners in real estate are doing a lot of reset,
mhm.
right? Going back to things that we were doing before the pandemic,
Sure.
before our rates were in the twos or,
Yeah.
So just things that, it's different now, but in, being in the industry prior to when it all kind of went crazy,
Yeah.
like this feels normal for me.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm glad that it's not extremely foreign to me or that I just have no ability to operate, you know, in events and things, things like
Yeah.
that, like being in front of people or speaking to people. I actually love that. It fills my cup. I work from home. So
Yeah.
being out in front of people and again, not just sharing what I do and what my team is very, very good at, but it's also just who you are
Yeah.
naturally. Do you have kids? Do you like sports?
There's an event tomorrow.
What's the event tomorrow?
AREP has an event tomorrow from like 5 until 7:30 at Pint House Brewery on Ben White.
Yes, it's like the young professionals, and I've been to one of their
Yeah.
events, and it was awesome. So yeah, I mean the events thing to kind of go back to it takes me out of my comfort zone, I live in Lake Travis, so I call it my island,
Right.
meaning it's a drive for me to go anywhere.
A little bit.
But I am just trying to remind myself that we're all kind of in a space where, again, being known is going to be really important.
Well, when you have time for it.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've been trying to kind of like explain to people that aren't doing this is that there, are ebbs and flows in our business. You've been doing this quite a
Sure.
long time, and you've seen instances where maybe you are legitimately too busy to be able to do things like this, right?
Right.
I mean, I would argue that you always have to be focusing on new business at least a little bit.
Right.
But, there have been some really, really busy times where it's been tough to manage. So then when things, become a little slower, it's like double down on it, put together your content. Like my marketing company literally talked to me last week and they're like, dude, we have so much content right now, but I'm going out of town for 2 weeks in like 30 days from now. And I'm like, no, guys, we gotta, and hopefully this doesn't get out before then, but you won't even know because
Yeah,
I'm gonna have so much content put together, and
which is awesome.
and that's kind of the idea is explaining to everybody that definitely do it when you have the time, double down, and then I try to encourage people to do it all the time, but
also making time for it. Right?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So saying that I could be doing this, but again, doing things that are going to inevitably build my business.
Yeah,
just
money-making
organically.
activities.
Yes, things that don't cost money.
Right.
Ads are one thing, or if you're doing like sponsored post on Facebook or whatever that might be.
Still got to make the content.
Yes, yeah. So for me, that is what I am trying to focus on. I'm also trying to think of, I feel like working with my team, you're not just hiring one of us, you're hiring all 14.
I like that.
We do north of 250 transactions a month. I mean, that is exposure to the process in the industry. Like, who else is seeing that? And if there is, then it's a very small percentage. And so, every day I see something change in our contract or a requirement. I mean, what do they say? There's like 30 outs to a transaction that a buyer can have. And so more than 30, I think. I can't remember the exact amount. But, just having that second set of eyes is so valuable.
Well, yeah, if you're
right
doing
now.
250 transactions a month, I mean, most agents aren't doing anything close to that.
No.
So if something changes or, maybe they just haven't come upon that certain type of situation and you guys can catch that. That's one of the things I ask everybody in regard to, their own business specifically. Is there something specific that, for those of you that have never, for the people who haven't used you as real estate agents when they come on originally, is there kind of something that if you could just make a blanketed statement to every single agent that utilizes a transaction coordinator from your company that you could say, hey guys, this is something that I want to bring up right away because we see this as an issue from time to time?
I personally do all of the onboarding calls. So I talk to agents about how the service will look, what they can expect from the team.
What's that look like? Because what I find is that the best content we get is exactly that, because people are afraid to call you. Not because you're going to say, people want to troll, right?
Yeah.
They want to know like, oh, well, what's it going to be like? I don't want to pick up the phone. So yeah, I mean, what does a general onboarding call look like?
Yeah. So my first statement or question to the agent is, tell me a little bit about yourself, because every agent's different. Their setup is different. Maybe they have a small brokerage. Maybe they work for Compass or Keller Williams or Cooper Sotheby's. My conversation will shift based on that. And
Okay.
the reason for that, and a lot of it is, how long have you been in the industry, and have you ever used a transaction coordinator before? So if they have never used a transaction coordinator before, my conversation with them is automatically probably 15 minutes added to my call, because I am
Gotcha.
walking them through exactly what the process will look like for the pre-listing process if they choose to hire us for that, because we're per package. So it's, do you plan to use us for pre-listing services? And they'll say yes or no, because some agents choose to do that themselves because it's marketing and things that they want to have more hands-on, and that's okay. And then, the contract to close, which is probably what we do. We do more contract to close than we do listing launch. And so I'm walking them through the moment that they go under contract until it closes, what all is included in that process, as if they've never done a transaction before, so that they fully have an understanding of what an agent does and what a transaction coordinator does. Because if you don't know or feel comfortable with that back and forth handoff,
Yeah.
it can feel a little
Foreign.
Great. I was going to say something totally different, but very foreign.
Yeah.
And so I always encourage them that it may take a few transactions before they feel really comfortable and good with the flow and the rhythm. I use the term rhythm all the time, because that is what we are constantly getting to, is a rhythm, so that they understand what we're going to say to the client and when we're going to say it to the client. So I think part of my conversation is not only what we do, but also really making sure they understand that we have a process that is tried and true. So there are certain times that we do certain things, right? So if you're a transaction coordinator and I'm a transaction coordinator, you may do something slightly different than what I do.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's no harm in that. I do feel like the way we do it and when we do it is why we are so successful at what we do. But there's consistency. So, my entire team is operating in sync.
Right.
So people tell me that all the time. They're like, how do you get 14 people doing things the exact same way you do? And I'm like, well, I am fully involved in the operations of the company. So my sole position now is business development, getting agents to understand how the service is going to work. That way, when they start to work with their transaction coordinator, it's clear.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel as foreign. So by the time they're done talking to me, they're like, that was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So my conversations are free.
Sure.
No one's paying to talk about what our services are going to look like. So I always tell them, we're per transaction. Until we render a service for you, you're not paying anything.
Yeah.
So that helps them to feel better about, because, if it's a new agent, they haven't done any transactions. So they're like, well, I want someone to help me because I don't know the process, but I don't have money to pay them.
Right.
So, getting them to truly understand, what our fees are and when we would invoice them.
Gotcha.
And then again, just really talking about the biggest parts of how we help them through the process. And that would be managing the deadlines.
Yep.
So financing period, HOA deadline, option period, survey T47 deadline. I mean, there are quite a few deadlines within a contract, and
Yeah.
I think that not a lot of people put focus on that. Which
And Seamless stays on them. I've seen it.
you've seen it.
I've seen it.
So yeah, I have another lender friend that every time I see him at a event, or our kids play sports together. So, and he lives in my community, so I'll
Yeah.
see him around, and he's like, "Man, those Seamless girls are always on me."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So our job is not to just service the agent, but
Mhm.
a lot of what we do is making sure that other people are keeping the transaction on track as well.
So what seems to be the big pushback? I mean, to me, it sounds like a no-brainer. Obviously, cost is going to be one of them, and
Sure.
but outside of cost, I mean, if you're producing value, then it makes sense. I mean, is there a number of transactions that it doesn't make sense for an agent? Like what seems to be the thing where you have a great meeting, you make a connection, and then they're kind of like, I don't know if this is a good fit.
The percentage of people that don't, if they are reaching out to me and
Mhm.
we have a conversation, we connect, they commit to having the conversation, and, because people procrastinate,
Yeah.
maybe they're in a moment where they feel like they need it right in that moment. And then I try to get them on the phone and it's like, then they're too busy or they don't make it a priority, I guess the
Right.
best way to say that. But if I connect with them, the percentage of agents that fill out paperwork and become a client of ours is
Mhm.
very high.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really just about getting in front of them.
Yes. So I am far from a salesperson. I'm
Okay.
actually really bad at sales. I'm service, customer service,
Right.
systems, project management. That's all my jam. But I don't have to sell anyone anything. They need good help.
Mhm.
And they most always, when they inquire, they know someone who knows us and they've heard great things. It's someone that they trust.
Yep.
And so I take pride in that. I really do. I really
You
feel
should.
like, yeah. So my position is easy in that sense, but currently in our market, in our industry, it's growing your network.
Gotcha.
People knowing who you are.
Are you affected in any way by some of the things in regards to like, oh, well, I have somebody overseas that can do that or anything along those lines? Do you run into any of that?
No,
Okay. And
no.
then what about the big scary AI?
AI.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. How is that affecting your business?
Wow. It's not currently.
Okay.
Okay. I have seen articles
Mm-hmm.
and I have seen people in TC forums
Yep.
that are like nationwide. I have seen conversation on it. My team uses Chat GPT for like listing remarks on the
Okay.
MLS. Like
Yep.
they put it together and then they go back and tweak it.
So right now it's helping you.
It is helping us, yes, and
It's
I
awesome.
think it will help our industry in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Now, it kind of goes to like Open Door and Zillow and all of those
iBuyers.
iBuyers that come into the space, and I am just a firm believer that it goes back to like the relationship business,
I agree.
and I am a firm believer in that. And I've had systems with automation, and automation is great in a lot of ways. But when you put it fully on autopilot, we all know in real estate transactions, it's if this, then this.
Right.
Like every transaction tells a story. So I think artificial intelligence will, in regards to that, I think it will be more of a challenge to fully come into our space. But I would say no, I have not seen anything that I feel has threatened what we do.
No, it's good. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's kind of a blanketed question that I've been asking a lot of people because, and one of the big ones was we had an appraiser on here, right?
Yeah.
So, like, can you envision if, hypothetically, like all appraisals are done through like automated value assessments, but then, she kind of mentioned, like, I think you're always, especially for fraud reasons and everything along those lines, you're going to need somebody to actually view the property.
Yep.
So although we may not be like 100% giving an opinion of value any longer, like you're gonna still need appraisers
You're
that are
still
gonna be able to,
overseeing it,
right, that are
you
gonna
know.
make sure the house is still standing, that it's not
And
been like gutted.
I think it in a lot of ways will be beneficial to companies to, again, like help them do their job, like make it more efficient. Because the time it was taking us to put together marketing remarks for a listing
Mm-hmm.
was time consuming.
Yeah.
And now that has shortened. We still put work into it to tweak it, to make it tell its story for the actual property. Because while it puts something together, you can tell that it's not fully, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like telling the story of the property. So we go back in there and put final touches on it.
I've got a question that I selfishly just want to ask for myself is, so we obviously know that you're looking for real estate agents and that's, kind of your bread and butter in terms of your ideal client.
Yep.
Who is, as far as an industry is concerned, what industry seems to be your biggest referral partner, if there is one?
Wow. I'm going to say like either broker support teams.
Mm-hmm.
So like if Cooper Sotheby's has like an admin team that does like DAs or whatever it
Or
might
even
be.
like a productivity coach or something like
Yes.
that.
So I would say that avenue from brokers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the admin or productivity team, or title companies.
Title.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Title is almost itching for agents to be organized.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
like I'm
Same.
yes,
I mean, honestly.
yeah, like if you're doing a deal with no support staff on it, does it feel different?
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think the thing that's interesting to me outside looking in, it's like the agents that are doing, I sometimes think that real estate agents really almost want to be transaction coordinators, that they don't
Sure.
really want to be real estate agents
Yeah.
because kind of bringing this, I'm not even trying to harp on this, but I keep coming back to it in the sense of like,
Oh, you want to talk about it?
well, it's going after new business,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of like what we started this whole thing on. And it's like, I've said this about my own team, right? I have loan officers and people that work with me. And what's sometimes surprising to me is like, I've seen, and I'm just going to relate it to real estate agents. I've seen real estate agents that if, they have a client, they're providing white glove service, their client's best interest is totally in mind. They know how to negotiate contracts. They know how to do everything that a transaction coordinator is doing,
Right.
right? And if we hand that real estate agent a client, that client couldn't be in better hands. But I see that exact agent close like 4 transactions a year,
Yes.
right? And it's like, and what I've identified in my business and in the real estate business and in a lot of businesses is like the difference between a real estate agent and a transaction coordinator, in my opinion, is only one thing, and that's who can generate new business.
Yeah.
Because I deal with transaction coordinators that are probably more organized and almost better than some of the real estate agents that I've done business with.
Yeah.
And so, again, if it's like, well, why aren't those transaction coordinators going out and just doing these deals on their own? Well, I know the answer. It's like they don't know or want to generate new business. It's just not what they're good at. They're good at being a transaction coordinator.
Yes.
And
There are
so,
actually a lot of transaction coordinators that couldn't go out and get business to save their, I mean, it's like they go into a shell.
are any of your transaction coordinators ex-real estate agents?
Yes.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Not a high volume of them,
Right.
believe it or not. In fact, historically, and a higher percentage of people that are successful in a transaction coordinator role are actually have like project management background.
Interesting.
It's not that I've trained girls that are on my staff now that had zero experience. And I knew that they had that skill set of managing things at
Sure.
a high volume. And so really that was more their foundation than real estate.
Well, and so to your point with title being kind of the biggest referral partner, they kind of almost want you to utilize or want real estate agents to utilize you because it's going to make the transaction more seamless. Right?
Well, yes, they're telling them. I have title companies that will reach out to me and ask me to call that agent because they need our help.
Yeah.
Right. And they are identifying business for me because they enjoy seeing my team on transactions. So I'll have escrow officers reach out and say, you know what, I just needed to remind you that your team is awesome and they do the right amount during the transaction that makes it feel helpful, not chaotic, or that there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Well, and I think any sales coach or productivity coach would flat out say, look, like if you're using a transaction coordinator, that should put you in a position as a real estate agent to free up additional time to go
100%.
after new business, right? Like we're not trying to free up this time so that you can go hang out with your friends. Like we want to free up more time so that you're not doing all of the additional, for lack of a better term, paperwork and organization that is required on this transaction because we need you to do what you're supposed to be good at, Mr. or Mrs. Real Estate Agent. And that's generating new business, whether it's by finding other sellers and finding other buyers. But unfortunately, I think sometimes that's the part that real estate agents don't like.
Yeah.
And so they
Well, it's out of their comfort zone.
right,
So
and
they're
so
like,
they
oh, I'm
find
not
they
busy enough. I'll do the transaction myself. I'm hearing that now in our shifted market
right.
where agents are like, well, you haven't seen me because I've been slow. And so I've been doing it myself. I'm like,
Why?
no, why? It's
Right.
not income producing whatsoever.
Agreed.
So for me, and that's part of my conversation with
There's the
agents
public service
is
announcement to the agents, right?
yes,
And we
put
need to use
your
that as a soundbite.
focuses, to income producing tasks, and transaction management is not one of them.
Right.
And you're paying per transaction, so you're not paying us if you're not doing business.
Mm-hmm.
So and our goal in our process with the transaction management is to get them referrals based on how great the experience was. Since I came in the industry, all I've known is my goal as a transaction coordinator should be to generate referrals for that agent, give them such a good service
Yeah.
that they refer their mom or their grandma or their aunt or their sister, and so I also make sure that agents, just depending on how the conversation flows or what their needs are, what they're hesitant about, things like that, my conversation will shift based on that because everyone is so different. But I myself handle all of the incoming business currently.
I think it's smart. I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, I want to have control over that. And really, it's the the control of the conversation because it looks different. Maybe not in 5 years. Maybe I'm not the one doing that. But for now, that's what I do.
no, it's, I mean, it's
But
working.
it's so important. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
it's working.
It's
And
very important.
so are there any other things that you're seeing that are kind of relevant to now that are, we've kind of focused on your business. We got a little bit into, kind of that, what I call like public service announcement
Yeah.
to the real estate agents, like, hey, don't do your own transactions because you're slow. Provide them to to Seamless, let them do their seamless work.
Right.
And you do what you do best, which is going out and finding additional buyers and sellers. I mean, is there anything else that you're experiencing or seeing in this current market that, kind of hits home with whether it's pain points or any aha moments?
I think the biggest thing for people to know in the now is we are back in a market where people are negotiating repairs and there are contingencies, or like I'm seeing different like weird loan types
Right.
and options that buyers and sellers are electing to get to make the deal work. So it's important now more than ever to have a seeing eye dog a part of your transaction, because every deal is gold, but there's also a lot that's going into our transactions now, more so than there have been in the last probably 3 or so years. And so for me, that makes it more obvious or apparent that agents need to have someone else laying eyes on the transaction, again, to put their focuses in other areas.
Yep.
But when they're putting their focus in other areas, they've got to have someone who's actually laying eyes on that and following up on the multiple deadlines and contingencies and things that are a part of transactions in our today market.
Well, and you operate with a lot of lenders as well. What's something that that you want to let all the lending community know? Like, hey, respond to your emails. Like,
lenders love transaction coordinators, but you know what? We have a great community of lenders. Like there is a handful of like really good ones who can appreciate the extra communication on transactions because they understand how important that is for the buyer as well.
yeah,
And so for me, when you have us and then you have lenders who just appreciate all of the teamwork. It takes a village, because you might need a document circulated last minute or whatever that is.
Oh,
How
I use
long
you
are
girls
you
a lot
waiting?
for that.
Yeah,
no, it's perfect. It's awesome.
It's like, how long are you waiting for an agent to turn that around?
It's I mean,
crazy.
truthfully, as a lender, the only thing I would say, and I wholeheartedly cannot say this about Seamless, but transaction coordinators in general, because there's others out there that work for brokerages and whatnot. The only thing that I find is I find myself as a lender having to update the transaction coordinator and the real estate agent because they will contact me separately. And I'll never understand why someone would pay a transaction coordinator to do their job. So I typically will like always update the transaction coordinator, but then the real estate agent will reach out to me directly to ask for updates. And that just can make me,
Crazy.
yeah.
Yes. There's nothing worse than everyone not being on the same page. And we get
Right.
it too, right? There's a change. Maybe you discussed with the agent that there was going to be some extension or no credit approval or whatever it is. An extension is needed.
Right.
And the agent and the lender do XYZ and the TC is not in the know at all.
Yeah.
And so everyone has those like pain points of having multiple people a part of the transaction. But I think it's really important for lenders to understand that a transaction, it is more important for a TC to know the update than it is for the agent to know the update.
You hear that, other lenders out there?
I mean that.
Yeah.
Because if you give something to me, the likelihood of A, it happening quicker, and B, like whatever you're needing follow up on, I'm going to be able to do that. And my agents who have been in the business for years, shout out to Jeanette Spinelli. She's been one of my clients forever and
She
ever.
was just here last week with like half the team.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
She's awesome. And, but she would be like, if her and I were sitting here at this table, she would even say, don't give it to me.
Right.
Give it to Amy. Because if you give it to Amy, she's going to make sure that whatever needs to be done with it's going to be done. And I can say that for my, across my team.
Well, I've been telling everybody who comes in here that, this is like going to the gym, right? You can't just go to the gym one time and then expect that you're going to receive,
100%.
achieve results. And so maybe what we need to do is we'll do another thing where we can talk a little bit more about Seamless, and we'll have Jeanette on so she can give some testimonials and everything like that, right?
Yes. So we could talk back, because it's important, honestly, to get a perspective. If you're on the fence about transaction management, it's important to get perspective from an agent.
Yeah.
A successful one, honestly.
Yeah.
And then a transaction coordinator, because our perspectives are totally different. We are different, right? And me sitting next to an agent, it's important that an agent recognize that we have a set of skills that typically don't come natural to an agent. And so they're very quick to say, that's not my strong suit. I need someone who is organized, can follow up on things. But then there's some that think that they can do it themselves because they're not busy enough,
Right.
quote unquote. But it's because they're not putting their time in the right areas.
Right. Well, I mean, that's anything, right?
Yeah.
People that are too busy to go to the gym, people that are too busy to eat healthy, people that are too busy to, I don't know. I should walk my dog more, honestly.
I know.
I really should. I should walk my dog
I've been doing that
more.
more because it's like, I have the time. You have the time.
Yeah.
So
You just got to make time
it.
for it.
Yes.
Can you believe we are coming up on an hour?
Really?
It flies, right?
Wow.
So do you have anything else you want to talk about? Go ahead.
Well, I kind of want to talk about rates a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, that's the other thing I tell people. I'm like, what do you want to ask a lender? Because I'm right here.
Like, what does your world look like today as an individual? Well, you have a team.
Yeah.
So tell me about like your setup. Do you do production yourself still at a...
Yeah, so I find that the way that I have things set up is a little bit different than a lot of the lenders that I kind of compete with. And then also Gold Star's got like multiple branches, so we all kind of do things differently. And what I find is that you've either got like the one-stop loan officer who does all the inbound and then handles everything, kind of similar to like what real estate agents do, where they refuse to have a transaction coordinator and they're doing everything from start to finish. There's no one else that the buyer ever talks to.
Yeah.
And then you've got others that kind of act like business development, and they really are just making connections with real estate agents, taking in, for lack of a better term, like leads or referrals from the real estate agents, and then kind of handing them off to their team of loan officers and processors that are closing it. I actually do kind of like a hybrid of that.
Okay.
So the way that I operate my business is I'm doing all the business development. I'm meeting with the agents. I'm taking on the inbound leads and referrals, but I'm the only person that that buyer. So those of you that are, referring business to me, real estate agents, your buyer will never talk to anyone other than me.
Okay.
I do have a team that supports me, kind of like transaction coordinator, things like that. And they do reach out via email. but you will never have an actual physical phone call with anybody other than me. If we can't get it handled in like one, maybe two tries with, one of my, for lack of a better term, processor or transaction
Right.
coordinator, I'm on the phone, I'm getting involved. And I use the 80-20 rule. 80% of my clients, it's somewhat of a, simple deal, and we can email back and forth and we can get everything that we need. But sometimes we have hangups, whether it's, hey, we don't think you're getting it.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone, I'm having that conversation. And the reason that I adopted that years ago was because a lot of the biggest complaints that I get from people that come to me from my competitor is they're like, competitors, I should say, is like, we don't, it was like every other day we talk to someone new.